The last year has been absolute chaos. When I first started, I would not delegate anything, even though I was paying people to do it, which I was just I was awful. It was like micromanagement. I always basically tell myself there is no choice. It's going to work regardless. I think my main concern was I've never really had to answer to anyone. You get a lot of unwanted attention in terms of people saying nasty things online, which I took to heart. You are set up to fail, I'll be honest, and it's a competition of who can hack or who can handle chaos the best.
This is the Leeds Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Fraser. What happens after the cameras stop rolling when you win The Apprentice? After hearing her story last year, we caught up again with the 2024 Apprentice winner, Rachel Woolford, to find out what's been happening in the business since she won, how she spent the £250,000, the ups and downs of being a winner, and how much is Lord Sugar really involved. This is a really interesting episode, so let's get going. On today's Leeds Business Podcast, I have with me Rachel Woolford, owner and founder of North Studios Leeds. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, now you've got a great honour because you're the first guest we've had to come back on the show. So,
oh, well, that's a compliment. I'll take that.
Absolutely. So those who didn't listen to the first episode we had with Rachel, there will be a link to the show notes, a link in the show notes to that. But for those who haven't or don't know who Rachel is, Rachel, give us 20 seconds on who Rachel Woolford is and what you do.
So I am a local Leeds girl, set up North Studio nearly 5 years ago this year. It is a small boutique fitness studio based in Roundhay, and we've also got a second site in Harrogate. Last year, I won the BBC's Apprentice. So last year's been pretty chaotic, just taking every opportunity from that, I guess.
Absolutely. Now, that's obviously the key. We are recording this on the Monday before the Thursday that the final is going to go out on. So we'll come on to The Apprentice later. But just give us a quick summary of the setup of the business up to the point of The Apprentice. So it's like a catch-up for that bit.
So up to the point of The Apprentice, the business was a few years old. I had two sites, so I did have the Leeds and Harrogate site, which the common misconception is I didn't have a business prior to going on the show, but I actually did, and they were already quite a few years old. And it was essentially me running it, which is still the case now, but me running it, and got a team of about 20, probably about 15 up to the point of the show. So got a few new people on board because we've increased capacity, we've increased the amount of classes, and we've recently expanded, which I'm sure we'll touch on later in the podcast, but with the expansion, that's increased capacity as well. And we're a busy little business, and we were before we went on The Apprentice. And I guess, again, we'll touch on this later, but I got a lot of why are you doing it, or you don't need to go on it, like the business is already successful. And I guess that there was a lot of outside noise before I went on the show and afterwards from people around who were wondering why I did it, but
Okay.
it was good in the end. It was worth it.
Yeah. Now we covered that the whole Apprentice experience in depth in the last episode, and pretty much we left off when it had been announced. And we talked in the episode about what potentially is going to happen. So talk us through what's happened to the business since you were on The Apprentice, and how much of it was affected by being on The Apprentice, and how much of it was just how the business would have grown anyway.
So like I said, it was a pretty busy business before we went on the show. And then coming out of it, April last year, so I won in the middle of April last year, and coincidentally, I guess, April up until March this year was our biggest month of revenue we'd ever had on record, which I don't genuinely know if it was coincidental or it was just a really busy month, because I did see still a lot of the same faces coming through. I think people thought we'd have loads and loads of new people, which the mad thing is, I think we did, but I was spending a lot of that time between, I'd say, April and June down to London. I was having to go down a lot for various reasons and various things that I was contracted to do with The Apprentice. So I probably missed quite a lot of the new people that were coming through the door. But it was quite strange. We did a charity event last year, and a few people came that I didn't recognise, and I got talking to them because I was trying to get around to all the people that had given their time up to come on our charity event. And a few of them had said, I said, oh, how did you hear about the studio? Or when did you start coming? They said, oh, because we saw you on The Apprentice, which I know a lot of people think, well, of course it was natural marketing, but I don't know, and I never will fully know, sadly, the direct proportion of people that came from watching you on the show, or perhaps had already heard of North Studio and then saw it on the show and thought, oh, I'll give it a go. So in the customer perspective, we've probably got a few more clients from it. And then in terms of the actual impact of the show itself and the investment, so within a few months of winning, it doesn't happen straight away. There's a lot of legal contracts to sign, as you can imagine. And essentially, I got the £250,000 investment, and I didn't use it for ages. I didn't use it for about 6 months. And people kept saying, what are you using it for? What are you using it for? And I didn't have a building to expand straight away. So if it had been maybe a product-based business, it would have happened straight away. But because my business is very location sensitive, so I'm not just going to open for the sake of it. And initially we'd spoken about opening outside of Leeds, and I started looking at Manchester in summer last year, and we actually got approached by quite a big business in Manchester who were looking to sell, and we were essentially going to come in. However, at the same time, as the saying goes, all your opportunities come at once. And I got a phone call from my lovely neighbour in Leeds at the Leeds studio, and it was a nail salon next door. And she called me and said, I want to put the property on the market. Do you want it? And I wasn't in the market to be buying any properties. I lease all my properties. But I immediately said to her, I said, do not put it on the market. Like, I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Long story short, and I'm saying long story short because it was quite a long summer, we negotiated and we ended up buying the building. So Lord Sugar and I have ended up becoming landlords together, which wasn't part of the plan at all. It's kind of just fallen that way because this amazing opportunity came up next door to the Leeds site, which, when it's quite frankly 50 yards from the Leeds studio, it made sense to acquire the building and expand the Leeds site. And I think maybe we disappointed a few people because we weren't opening outside of Leeds or outside of Yorkshire. But for me, it made so much logical sense because A, we've got demand for something called Reformer Pilates, which I couldn't do with the current capacity of the site. We've absolutely maxed the site out. And B, it spreaded so much of the management cost because, well, I can literally walk over the street and make sure everything's working. So it's been quite lovely, really, because I now own a commercial property, 50-50 with someone, but that's quite a milestone in itself, I guess. And yeah, so then we ended up buying this building, turned it into a Reformer Pilates studio, which is now fully working. And so it took a little bit of a turn, I guess. So that's my summary of what happened post-show.
Right. Okay. So is the building owned by North Studios, or is it a separate company that owns it and then sort of rents it to North Studios? How have you structured that?
So it's owned by North Studio and it's owned outright. So we bought the building in cash. The reason we bought it in cash was to speed up the process and then finance it afterwards. However, the whole reason I bought it was in cash was to make sure, like I said, we speed it up. Did it speed it up? It really didn't, because there was, as usual, when you're buying a building, especially a commercial building, there was so many things that came up with the solicitors. So really, we should have just applied for the mortgage from the get-go. But that's another story now, and we've refinanced and getting the cash back in the business. So that's a little bit of a learning curve. Offering to buy in cash doesn't always often speed up the process.
Okay. Nice learning straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
You talked about possibility of expanding into Manchester.
Yes.
And the opportunity arose across the road. Just talk us through the thinking, the pros and cons behind that. And I suppose if you're buying an existing business, that's quite an interesting way of expanding quite quickly, isn't it?
So with the Manchester business, it was a great opportunity because they have amazing kit. The fit out is done. So I've never had that before. We've always had to fit out. We've always had to buy the equipment, which is a massive capital outlay. And I mean, we finance our equipment, but still, that's still your monthly cost going out. So with the Manchester opportunity, I really liked it because their brand was quite similar to ours in terms of the classes they offer, the demographic that attend, but they wanted a lot of money for it. And I'm talking a lot more than the £250,000 investment. So it would have required the full 250 grand and then some form of loan, which I wasn't totally comfortable with. And I'm not saying that Manchester opportunity is completely out of the picture, because that's still something that I'm looking at. And it might not be that business that I was just talking about then, but potentially looking at the outskirts of Manchester, because I've definitely got itchy feet. My mum said to me last week, she goes, "How's work then?" Because she works with me. She goes, "How's work?" And I go, "Yeah, it's good." And she looked at me and she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "You bored?" I went, "Yeah, a bit." So I get itchy feet. So I've decided that I think not this week, at least the next 6 months, continue to build sustainably the Leeds studio and make sure the Reformer studio's as successful as it can be. But I'm definitely looking at the Manchester side of things because it's a place I really love as well. And I can definitely, out of anywhere else in the country, that's where I can see the brand expanding.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now, we talked in the last time we spoke, and I know this came up actually on The Apprentice, about spreading you too thin. How would that work if you did go to somewhere like Manchester?
It's a really tough one because someone brought up the same question the other day, and I could technically open somewhere in Manchester within a few months if I really wanted to. I could easily find myself a unit, and I'm pretty familiar with the process now of fitting somewhere out and getting the right equipment in and finding a team. But it does go back to how much can I take pressure wise as well, because I'm finally in a place where the last year has been absolute chaos. But I'd say 2025, which, yeah, we're only 4 months in, but it's the first time since opening my business that I feel the least stress I've ever felt, if I'm being totally honest. The business is doing the best it's ever done. And it's it's quite a big risk to shake that up. And that was my mum's point last week, because she knows how much stress a fit out would cause. And it doesn't matter if the fit out was in Leeds or in Harrogate. I think it's the pressure that it puts on me, but that's also something I can handle. But I'm also I'm in such a great place at the moment, which isn't really consistent with business thinking, because business people are always looking to do what's next, and comfortable is not an option. And I've always preached, if you're comfortable, you're not in a good place. You need to feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, I'm feeling a bit too comfortable, so maybe I do need to make a change. But I think, going back to your question of how would I spread my time, it would be a case of spending more time in Manchester, because Leeds can run itself pretty much, and so can Harrogate. I've got an amazing team. Some of the team work at both studios as well, and the team are great. I can go on holiday, and don't get me wrong, I'll check in. But I went to Japan in March, and obviously big time difference. I think it's about 9 hours, and I had no choice but to just get on with it and know everything was okay. And I've got that is my biggest asset, my team. And without them, I couldn't have scaled to the point we have. So it would be a case of, I guess, delegating more, which is something I am learning to do as we go along. And it's something I've struggled with as a control freak. But I'm definitely getting better. And I've delegated quite a few more roles earlier this year. And that's given me a lot more free time and maybe more time to think about the opportunity like Manchester. So I definitely spend at least 60% of my time in somewhere like Manchester if I was to expand.
Right. Right. Okay. You mentioned the D word there, delegation. Talk me through it's something I love talking to people about, and I struggled with it initially, and then I got around it. Talk to me about the stress of learning how to delegate, and give some people some tips about delegation.
Oh gosh, delegation. We could do a whole episode on it, because I've done a full 360 and back with it, and now somewhere in the middle. When I first started, I would not delegate anything, even though I was paying people to do it, which I was just I was awful. It was like micromanagement, even though my team were great and they never backed out or anything, but I was micromanaging people for sure, because I guess from the start, it is a new brand, and I was so funny about certain things. And I remember I'd come in on a Saturday, which wasn't my work day as such. I wasn't scheduled to instruct, but I'd come in obviously and check everything was good, and I'd work the reception and speak to customers, and I'd see one thing out of place and it would ruin my weekend, which I'm not like that now. I couldn't be more opposite. And then I went to a stage of starting to delegate more. I took someone on, which in hindsight was the wrong thing to do for a number of reasons, which I'll touch on shortly, but where I probably delegated too much and I almost lost my creative freedom. And I think North Studio took a little bit of it became stagnant in that period for so many reasons, which again will take me a whole episode to explain, but that then ended not great. That side of delegation. So it really put me off doing it again. And for probably a good year after that, I took the reins back and I was like, that is never happening again. I will never put a manager in. And it put me off so badly. And then one of my lovely girls who's worked with me since day one had said to me, not all situations end like that. That was you just had a bit of bad luck, which she is right looking back, because since then I've brought some amazing people who were doing even things, this sounds ridiculous, but British Gas a few weeks ago email, you need to renew your energy supply, and it's this big song and dance, isn't it? And I'm thinking, I just can't do that today. There's that much going on. But I've got an amazing girl called Anne-Marie, who again has been working with me since day one, not actually as a fitness instructor, but doing admin for me, front of house for me, and she takes over that. Whereas 3 years ago, I'd have sat there on the phone all afternoon and have wasted crucial time, which I think that's the bottom line with this delegation thing is you need to know where you're most valued in your business. Me sitting on the phone to British Gas for the afternoon is not where I'm most valued. Me sitting and making sure the team are good that day, seeing what's going on with the sales report, making sure attendance is where it should be that week, that's where I should be sat. And you've got to accept that actually paying someone to do, I keep bringing back the British Gas thing, but whatever it is, it's way more cost effective and time effective if I just hand that job over. And it's I used to do the payroll, I used to do the VAT return. God knows why, because I wasn't efficient at it anyway, because that's not my skill set. And I was wasting hours when I could have just paid someone who is way more capable than I am of doing those things. So yeah, it's been a journey, is my delegation journey.
Yeah, it is. The key to it is opportunity cost, and also it's expertise. And exactly what you said. You're best served doing what you're good at. Somebody else is best served at doing something else. And as long as you delegate it and you give clear instructions and targets and timings and the level of quality that's got to be delivered, it works so well. And as you do it, the more you think, oh, this is quite good actually. I quite like this delegation malarkey.
Absolutely.
And the business, and magically the business grows. You go, how did that happen?
It was like last week. I actually had time to go and walk my dog in the daytime, which I just don't usually. I'm up and out like 6:30, 7, my day starts, and it doesn't usually finish till 8 in the evening. And because I've handed over some of those jobs, it's one big cycle. So I've handed those jobs out and then managed to go get half an hour's fresh air in the middle of the day, resets me. And then I'm a better manager to everybody else as well, rather than being stuck inside, getting grumpy because I've not had some fresh air or I've not got my steps in. Yeah. And it makes you a better person mentally, but also for your team and for your business.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, you talked about this reformer studio, and I know obviously it is physically, if nobody's been, it's across the road. Talk about that, because that's for many businesses, adding a product extension is quite a big step. So talk us through the whole launch and how it went, and what the business felt like and what were the issues around it when you launched it.
When we opened the reformer studio, we were quite late to what we were aiming to do. So we were aiming for an end of 2024 open. But to be honest, it was the solicitors, the legal side of things, purchasing the property took a long time. The fit out itself was really quite speedy, which if you've had a builder before, that's usually quite rare. But we had a really good team and it went really well. Now, the biggest challenge, I guess, was we were adding a product to the existing business or a service to the existing business, and you don't want to lose your clients to your own business. And what I mean by that is, so just to make it clear, we charge separately for the Reformer Pilates studio. So it's more of a premium service than I'd say we already offer a pretty premium service because it's small group fitness classes and we are more expensive than your average gym on the street, but we're actually charging separately. So you pay to attend a class in our main building, but that won't pay for you to go opposite because it's a smaller group. There's only 8 reformers, and it's a very sophisticated and I wouldn't say complicated because I don't want to make it sound like it's not the most niche thing ever, but reformer Pilates is a skill set, and it's really important that it's done properly. So we do charge a little bit more. So I guess going back to the challenge was you didn't want people to drop off their classes in our main studio or their main memberships to then go next door. And so far, I can't fully give you the whole picture because it'll have been 8 weeks actually this week that studio has been running. And we've had clients who are doing a bit of both. So they're still using their existing package in our main building and they're purchasing next door. And then you've got some people who are doing a bit of both and have maybe dropped their sessions in this building to go do Reformer Pilates. However, the way I see it is if people are dropping some of their classes, our main studio classes, it does open up our capacity to bring more people in because we are lucky to have quite a few wait lists on most of our classes. So it does open up some capacity and generally that should mean more revenue for the business. Other challenges, I guess, were making sure that we had enough clients to take on because we've already got a lot of clients from the area, I guess, or, just outside of Leeds, people do travel in as well. So that's always a concern, but I'm quite positive in that I always know we'll make it work. And I always basically tell myself there is no choice. It's going to work regardless. And it's not a naive mindset because I like to say, like the entrepreneurial saying is it's a calculated risk. But so far it's 8 weeks old and we're getting new people coming as well, which is great. It's maybe people who wouldn't have come to our other classes and now, I want to do Reformer Pilates. But really interestingly, it's an opportunity to chat to those clients and say to those clients, we do other classes across the road. And then they're coming in. So we're getting a little bit of a two-way system, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. And it's interesting because I know some people when they do a product expansion, as you said, there's that risk of cannibalization, but there's also
absolutely
there's more people coming into the system as well, both, as you say, through extra capacity and through an added product. So that's great. Right, let's start talking sort of post-apprentice stuff. But before we do, I need to talk to our listeners and viewers about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has 2 sides to it. My side of it is every week I bring you wonderful, motivational, inspirational guests like Rachel, free of charge. And your side, listener and viewer, is just one thing. Just recommend the podcast to one other person that you feel will get a benefit from it. And that's the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. That's a fair deal, isn't it, Rachel?
Absolutely.
So you've won the Apprentice. You've done all the paperwork. Talk to me about what you get from, do you see, how regularly you see Lord Sugar? Is it his team? How much input is there? What's it really like, post winning the Apprentice?
I think my main concern was I've never really had to answer to anyone. And interestingly, I've spoken to the winner of this year's Apprentice, and I'll be really careful not to give I can't give anything away. So I'm really careful. And that person, I'm not even saying he or she because it's.
I was going to say that.
That person had that same concern. And my response is actually, as long as they know you're making money and you're able to manage that business, which you were doing before anyway, they do leave you alone. And my contact with them is at least once a month. We chat as a group. So that's Lord Sugar, and then his close, basically the people who are both our accountants, company secretary, and a general advisor in that group who I got on really well with. They all understand how I work, and it's taken a long time, but I now understand how they work. And it took a good 6 to 9 months for me to really understand our relationship, and we've got a really good working relationship, but it took a long time to bring people in, if that makes sense. And my concern was I didn't want my team, or I definitely didn't want my clients to feel any difference. And that was really important to me. So I kept it quite quiet as well. So on social media, I'm very open about what's going on in the business. But now I would be more open. But in that first 6 to 9 months, I kept things very smooth because I didn't want to make things look like things were changing, because people don't like change. I love change, but people generally don't like change. And I remember getting a few comments at the time I was winning at one saying, is Lord Sugar going to be like, one of my girls, Lily won't mind me saying this, one of my team said, is Lord Sugar going to be our boss now? I was like, absolutely not, don't worry. So I kept, we kept things nice and smooth. But going back to how much contact we have, it's once a month, going through management accounts, which is nice because up until winning, I winged everything, I'd say. I didn't look at my management accounts, I'll admit that. I looked at the bank account and knew how much money I had in the bank. And I knew roughly from sales reports from my software what we were turning over a month. Did I know my monthly management accounts? Absolutely not. So it's taught me a lot about that. And now going forwards, whatever I do, whether I open another business or not, I know the value of management accounts, which I know to maybe a lot of people listening will think, why were you looking at that before? But as a business that's under 5, I was just making sure that month to month I had the money in the bank to pay everything, pay my bills, pay my staff, pay the back bill, and I knew we were good to go. And so it's been really good in that way. And another great thing has been my accountant. So I've changed accountants now, and my accountant now is in Lord Sugar's office. And say we're pricing something up, and like looking at the Manchester deal, for example, he can get me together a really quick sheet of projections, which would have taken me a long time. I'm quite good with numbers, but again, I'm not an accountant. So I guess it's a little bit of delegation as well. I could call them and say, what do you think of this deal? Or I met somebody at the weekend interested in potentially franchising, and it's something I'd be interested in doing with the studio. So it's something that I can say to them, what do you think of this franchise idea? And I'm not by myself in dirty water, if that makes sense. They can help clarify things, and if it's not worth it, they can tell me. So it's taken a long time, because it's 4 of them I work, well, it's Lord Sugar and 3 others who I work closely with, more 3 others than Lord Sugar, but it takes a long time to get to know each other and know how each other works. And for me, I would get an email maybe at 9 a.m, but I wouldn't be able to reply till say 1 because I'm with clients. And at first, I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm really bad at like getting back to them about that certain issue. But actually, they now know that until 12-ish, 12:30, my head's down with clients, and that's my priority on the morning, is looking after them, not sitting and emailing them back.
You said it took a while to sort of get used to working with them. What was the probably difficulties? Probably too much of a strong word. But what was the difficulty around that?
I think just making sure that I didn't lose autonomy in the business. And at first, I'll be honest, when I first won, I think when I spoke to you, I was probably starting to struggle, but then the following months, I struggled for quite a long time. And it wasn't until probably the end of July last year, and bear in mind, I got told I'd won in the middle of April, until the end of July, where I started to feel myself again. And there was some quite difficult periods of time. And I don't want that to sound ungrateful at all, because I appreciate it's an amazing opportunity and people would give their left arm for it. But it was quite difficult to navigate for so many reasons, because you get a lot of unwanted attention in terms of people saying nasty things online, which I took to heart. And now if I read those things, it genuinely can go over my head. And I also appreciate that if they're saying something nasty online, they've probably got not a great life themselves if they're making time to do that. But it was a very difficult time. So I don't actually think it's anything to do with having people coming into the business. It was more to do with, personally, I felt really not great, because it was more the apprentice side of things, not the business side. The business was running really well. We were busy. There was opportunities coming left, right, and centre. You know, the Manchester opportunities came. Flannels in Leeds, they approached us about going into their new flagship store. So business was great, but personally, I definitely took some time to get back to a happy place, let's say.
Okay. And it's funny, actually, not funny. It's interesting. You mentioned it towards the end of the last episode about, you know, the sort of nasty stuff online. How bad did it get, and did it taper off quite quickly? What was it like?
So now I would never see comments about me, because the good thing about The Apprentice is, in terms of TV, you do become quite irrelevant to the show, which is brilliant to me, because I wanted to, the day I won, until that July time, I wanted it to all be erased, which sounds awful. But I guess what I was finding difficult was there were people turning up to my business just to like come have not to be a customer, literally just to come have a look, asking me a lot of personal questions. There were people leaving Google reviews who had never been. There was a girl who'd left a Google review a few days after I'd won, and me being me, did some digging, found her, and spoke to her on the phone. This is crazy. I forgot I did this. Spoke to her on the phone, and she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're on the phone to me." I was like, "Yeah." I said, "What you put?" She basically left a few paragraphs saying why I shouldn't have won The Apprentice. And I'm like, "You're entitled to your own opinion. That's fine. I don't mind who you think had won, but you can't go and leaving Google reviews, 1-star Google reviews, saying that my pricing structure's wrong and my business is crap, basically." Anyway, she took it down. But I got loads of stuff like that. I got a few weeks after I'd won, and I thought it was all calming down. I was literally walking out. Bear in mind, this is Street Lane in Roundhay. Small place. I'm walking out of the business, and there is a photographer taking photos of me. And I managed to escape and get in the building next door. And my mum was working for me in the main building. And I called from the other building. I said, "Mum, there is a photographer outside." I said, "Lock the doors." And it just wasn't that. Some people would love that. I found it really, really uncomfortable, and I couldn't sleep. And I was then going home to seeing stuff online, and my Instagram, I was getting messages. I got so many good messages as well. So I don't want to say it was all awful, because it wasn't. I had some amazing support, but messages, comments, there was articles about my business, which was so personal, just saying, there was there's quite a few, that was talking about my business's accounts for the first 18 months, saying I didn't make any money, which, yeah, I didn't, because my business was 18 months old. I opened it in COVID. So 6 months of the trading year they were referring to, I was closed. There was no revenue, but we were still paying rent, and I was still paying things like rates, etc. So these people that were writing the articles gave it no context. But the articles weren't really a problem, because I knew what the articles were saying. It was like, well, fair enough. But it was more the comments. The comment sections were the most horrendous part, if that makes sense. And there was a lot of, I personally feel, and I never call this card usually, but I personally feel there's quite a lot of sexism, because it was me versus a male in the final. And I was warned the week before I won by a media advisor that I would attract more negative attention because I was the only female in the final. And I literally was like, "Okay, yeah, fine." And this person that told me that couldn't have been more correct. It was because I know Phil didn't get half as much stick that I got.
It's weird, isn't it? Just weird. It's weird. So give us some of the positive sides of sort of post-Apprentice winner, because I know you've done, and you said at the end of the last episode, you know, there are loads of opportunities and I want to milk it. And, you know, to your credit, I think you've done that. For 6 months, you were everywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you know what? I also take all the stuff I've just told you now as a huge positive, because it has changed me in so many ways, and it really made me look into why I reacted so badly or why I was struggling. So I honestly I'm so grateful for all of that experience I just told you about as well, genuinely, because it has made me a better person in business and as a person, in my personal life. But the positives, I mean, so many different things have happened and things that I never would have got the chance to do. Things like I was on BBC Newsnight, this was only a few weeks ago, with, I can't believe this, I was next to this Labour politician and then a girl that worked for the Telegraph. So they have really opposing views. Then there's me, and I'm thinking, why am I here? But great, I took that. Things like talking to yourself, great podcast opportunities, great. It's been an amazing networking opportunity because I've been really lucky and it's been really kind of people to invite me to some great events over the last year, locally and in London. But networking is so valuable, and it's one of those things, people think networking is going to an event and having to talk and mingle, but it's not. It's so much more than that. And the amount of business I've got out of going to these events, thinking, I probably won't get anything out of it. And it's not necessarily just North Studio business. I've gone to an event and someone said, would you come speak at our event? And it's a paid fee. It's a fee paid event. So it's opportunities that have just come out of nowhere, or suddenly speaking opportunities. And then on International Women's Day in March, I was speaking for Enterprise Cars to their graduates, which was really lovely because I was speaking to females who were about 21 in 21 age bracket. And it was really lovely to be able to speak to them because I remember being 21 thinking, what am I going to do with my life? So that was a great opportunity as well. Well, else have I done? Been given some lovely free gifts. Had some lovely free things sent in the post.
You got a free biscuit in the post as well, a Leeds Business Podcast biscuit.
I got a free biscuit in the post from Phil Fraser. That was great. I tell you what I got, which a lot of people, what North Leeds is like. I got a Defender car, and everyone thought as in like not forever. So I got this car from an amazing company called Apache, who basically zoop up cars. So like Overfinch would be a competitor, Cars would be a competitor. And Steve McDonald, who owns it, great guy, great Leeds guy, who would be great on the podcast. He was like, do you want to drive this car around for a year? And I said, can I put my branding on it? And he said, yeah. So I've got this really cool, horrendously loud Defender, which is embarrassingly loud because little old me gets in. But everyone thinks that typical North Leeds think I bought it with my winnings. I didn't. I'm not that stupid. But, things like that. I've got a car for 12 months, which will be sadly going back soon. But random little things like that. Well, not little, that's pretty big. But yeah, all sorts of random things.
Okay. What was the best speaking gig you've had?
I got asked to speak at the Chamber of Commerce in the Isle of Man in October. And it was when I got told what the fee was, someone had negotiated it for me. So I had management and I was like pretty flabbergasted, to be honest. But it was an imposter syndrome moment. But I was also thought, I have to prove to myself that I am worthy and I can do this, because confidence is something I struggle with, like up and down all the time. Anyway, I went along and it was just the most amazing night. Like I spoke for about half an hour, 45 minutes. But aside from that, just getting to speak to people who were working for the Isle of Man government, and I had local politicians coming up to me and saying, what do you think we should do with the education system for our children here? I'm thinking, I'm 28 years old. Why are you asking me? But my dad was like, Rachel, your input's really important because, they want to know from a young business owner's perspective, what do you think they could change? And that was it was amazing. And the people there were so friendly. They put me up, and the next morning, this lovely lady that I met at the event took me to the local park run because I love running. She took me to this local park run, and it was the whole thing. To say I got paid to do it, I would have, looking back, I'd have just done it for free. I won't tell them that, but it was great. I loved it. And it was a really lovely and great opportunity.
Yeah. And, it's great for the ego to stand up and do these things, but you're giving back as well, aren't you?
I just love it. And I've gone back to school, where I went and where your daughters went. And it's lovely to speak. It's lovely to speak to younger people that don't necessarily want to go down the traditional career path of becoming a doctor or a solicitor or something in that profession, which there is absolutely nothing wrong with. But I always knew I wasn't going down that path. And I've met some lovely young people at the schools and a different school as well, where they want to go into, they want to become an entrepreneur. And it's not necessarily fitness, but it's something along those lines. So it's nice to tell them there is other opportunities. And I was sat where they were 10 years ago, which they think, well, 30 this year, but when you're 18, you think 30 is really old. Well, I hope I'm not saying this and sound old, but you think 30 is really old and your life's going to be together. And there's still a lot of my life that's not together. But it's not, where they are doesn't seem that far away from where I am today. So it's nice to try and explain to them that there are opportunities if you take them.
Yeah, yeah. Now obviously we've touched on it. Obviously, The Apprentice. Have you watched it, this series, and what's it been like watching it from the outside, having been inside?
It's difficult to watch it, I'll be honest, because I watched it for years before I was on it, but it's difficult watching it for a few reasons. I think reason number one is I know how it's filmed, and you see situations and you think, oh, that was a bit unfair, because you are set up to fail, I'll be honest. And it's a competition of who can hack or who can handle the chaos the best. And it's hard to watch it because I see them get set up, and then I see what people are saying about them online on Twitter or everything. I'm thinking, do you know what? They might have said something stupid, but to be fair to them, they weren't given the best foundations for this task. So it's quite painful to watch in that way. And I actually prefer as well the later episodes. I think it gets way more interesting. So I've started to pay a little bit more attention to it in the last few weeks. And I need to catch up. Well, actually, no, it'll be this week, won't it, the final? So I don't need to catch up.
Thursday, yeah.
But I have watched the final 5 episodes and I love it. But again, it's really hard to watch because there's some really good business people in that episode, and they get torn to shreds. And I just think, should we be tearing people to shreds who've gone out there and they're trying to do something for the UK economy and they're doing good? And yes, a few of them had concepts rather than actual businesses, but why are we tearing them apart when they've put themselves out there? And I guess because I'm seeing it from the position I was in, and they're not doing harm. They're just trying to make something of themselves and potentially do something for the wider economy as well. So I find it hard to watch them get torn down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think, I mean, just as a general thing, do you think The Apprentice shows a good role model for what business is to young people?
I shouldn't say it doesn't, but I think it could do a lot better. And it goes back to, why are we painting these people out to be stupid when I know full well they've been set up to come across silly, or they've been given, the odds are against them from the beginning of a task, essentially. You say to me, Phil, okay, design a logo for this new shop, but Rachel, you can only use brown and green colours. That is what it's like. You've not got the full colour palette. You haven't got somebody who's going to spend weeks designing you a logo, which in real life you would do. For example, I know my logo, we went over it for months, finalising the concept. So the odds are stacked against you, and I think it's a real shame that we're tearing them down when we should be encouraging entrepreneurship amongst young people. And I think it could potentially put people off. I don't know. But it didn't put me off, and I watched it previous to going on. But I think it's outdated, if I'm being totally honest. And I'd say that to the exec producer. I think there's things that need to be changed about it.
Okay. So if somebody came to you and said, Rachel, I want to apply to be on The Apprentice, would you say yes or no?
I get it all the time. I got it at the beginning of the year when the interviews were starting for next year's Apprentice. And
yeah,
I'd say if you really want it, then absolutely do it. But don't do it for anything but being serious, because you can go on there for a bit of a joke and you can then come across as a joke and be mocked. And then forevermore, you're known as the joke that was on The Apprentice. Because I know some candidates who have that reputation. Luckily, if you're in the final 5 or the final, you don't really you get a bit of crap, but you're not really written off as a joke. So I'd say go on for serious reasons and also be aware of the consequences, because you are, I think there's 9 million viewers per episode or something they said this year. There's a lot of people watching it. So you're exposing yourself to a lot of potential opinions. And like me, I couldn't handle it, to be honest, but now it's taught me to handle it. So I guess just make sure you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's get back to real business then. Every week on the Leeds Business Podcast, we ask our guests to give us a how-to. So, Rachel, tell us what you are going to teach us how to do it, and then teach. No, that was wrong, wasn't it? I'll have to edit that bit out. Just do a how-to.
How-to. Okay, so mine is all about keeping the value in your product or your service, and something that really is my pet peeve: seeing businesses constantly devalue their business by discounting. So every week there's a new offer or a new discount. Get 20% off this week. Or I saw recently a local business say, just this weekend you can get 2, and I won't say what it was, but 2 something for £22, or I'll really give away what it was. But I thought, why are you doing that? Because the product itself is one of those is worth more than the 22 quid. And I just think you're completely devaluing your service. And also, if people see that you're constantly discounting, you're going to put them off paying full price because they're always going to wait for you. And secondly, they're not going to think that your full price is worth it. So I'm quite stubborn in that I won't take part in Black Friday. We do not discount. I can't tell you the only time we discounted, and this was me taking advantage of the Apprentice, when we won, I sent out a mail shot to all our subscribers and put, here's like 10% off because we won. Thought we'll cash in on the opportunity, and we did. We got a little bit of extra cash, but I've never done it since, and I didn't do it before because we are a premium service, therefore our prices are premium. So you either pay it or you don't, basically. So don't undervalue yourself or your service by constantly discounting.
I would totally agree with that, and I'd add the other side of it is I always recommend clients put their prices up. Because if 100%. People value your service and value what they're offering, a pound here, a pound there doesn't make any difference to somebody's pocket. But, you multiply that by tens or hundreds, it goes straight on your bottom line.
Absolutely. And I always think this at the moment, especially with this whole going back to the management accounts and introducing that into my life, when I'm seeing that bottom line each month, it's so motivating to know that, like you say, that extra £1 where you maybe discounted someone, that times 10 or times 100 makes a huge difference to your margins. And now I'm more lethal than ever with discounting, because at the end of the day, who's it going to affect? It's you, and it's your bottom line, and that's where it is going to show up.
Absolutely. A very, very good how-to. Just value your own business. So before we go, every guest gets the opportunity to give another Leeds business a shout out. So Rachel, who are you going to give a shout out to?
So they are a client of ours, and they're called Studio Sister. They are based in Wetherby. It's 3 sisters that own it, and they do hair and beauty. I think they do tattoos now, like little baby tattoos. But the reason I want to shout them out is they are such hardworking girls, and one of them is a client of ours, and she's been so supportive of me over the last year. So anybody that supports, any other business that supports us, I'm grateful for. So not just Studio Sister, there's a whole bunch of them, but particularly them, because recently they've just been so lovely, and I know how hard they work.
Okay, fantastic. There'll be a link to Studio Sisters in our show notes, as well as link to North Studios. No discounts available.
Absolutely not.
Rachel, it's been absolutely brilliant having you back on. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Oh, thank you again for having me, Phil.
Before we finish today's episode, I have a number of shout-outs. These are all people who have taken selfies with the famous Leeds Business Podcast biscuit. So, a big shout-out to Andy Simpson of Fast Signs, Leanne Latham of Signature Concierge, Neil Sevitt of Armstrong Watson, Peter Cruikshanks of Outside In Management, Rebecca Hopwood of UB Media, and Sandy Domingos Shipley, who is an ISO consultant. So if you'd like a shout out and you'd like a Leeds Business Podcast biscuit, just drop me an email or drop me a DM and I'll get you one in the post. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you hit the follow button so every new episode gets sent straight to your phone.